Lizzanators, what's up? Welcome back to another video. I asked you guys on Instagram if I should do a YouTube series where I read you my favorite book, and loads of you wanted to see that, so we are going to be doing that in today's video. And the book I'm going to be reading for you is Every Time I Die by Allison Russell. So before I start, I'll give you a little backstory on the book. So in like 2009, my sister was in university, my older sister, and she met this girl, Allison, and she wrote this book. And my sister told her how I like to write my own stories and I love to read. So she gave my sister this book to give to me for Christmas when I was like 15, 16, maybe probably 15. And it has been my all-time favorite book ever since. So I am excited to read it to you guys, and I hope you guys enjoy it too. So before we get started, I'm just going to read the back, all right? So let's get into it. Experiment 13 is a young girl. She was abandoned by her birth parents and raised in a laboratory by 3 scientists. The scientists tell her not to get attached to those around her. They teach her how to lie. They use the girl as their experiment under the supervision of an unknown man who will do anything to keep it a secret. During the experiment, 13 makes friends and enemies, falls in love, and dies, all more than once. She is desperate to find out the truth about the experiment, her past, and herself. So that is the back of the book. She's got a cute little design. And on the first page, she wrote me this little, if it focuses, you guys can see that. She wrote me this little thing, and it says, Elizabeth, enjoy the book and never give up on your dreams, Allison Russell. And then in brackets it says Allie. Alright. So the prologue is first. I'm not like other kids. I don't know my family. I've never lived in a house. I don't even have a real name. I am simply Experiment 13. I didn't grow up like a regular child. When other kids were learning to talk, I was being abandoned by my birth parents. When other children were having tea parties or playing cops and robbers in their backyard, I was being taught how to lie. When other kids were starting junior high, I was being told to never get attached. I was told that my parents abandoned me when I was scarcely a year old. That's when the lab, the only home I've ever known, adopted me. I've never really understood why a laboratory would want a little girl. After all, I'm not a white rat. Charlie, Brendan, and Carl are 3 scientists who raised me. Only Charlie spent time with me. The others were too busy. I never complained though. They didn't like it when I complained. I was never told what I was missing out on until I was 10. Let me drink 1 second. It's just juice. Fruity juice. My ragged old... Sorry, that's when they let me go outside. For the first time, I was so nervous. I brought my ragged old teddy bear with me. It was beautiful. I saw the grass and the sun. My favorite was a blue butterfly that landed on my hand and then took flight free up to the sky. Before that day, I thought I was the only little girl in the world. They started teaching me about the rest of civilization. That day, too, I learned about school, parents, and how mine had deserted me, countries, and even boys. It was all really fascinating. I learned all the information that I had missed out on for 10 years. It really surprised the scientists that I was able to learn all the information they threw at me so quickly. But then, Brendan muttered, something about smart genes, and I had no idea what that meant. When I was 11, the lab brought in a woman to discuss puberty and the reproductive system with me. It seemed to make the scientists embarrassed, so they left the room. When the woman came, when I turned 12, I began learning how to say goodbye and to never get attached. They brought in small animals for me to play with them for a while. Then they just took them away. Or killed them in front of me. That's horrible. I forgot about them and went on with my life. I think Charlie thought this would be hard for me, but he didn't realize how heartless and carefree I was. I didn't know what love was. I wasn't attached to anything because no one had ever shown me love. Charlie did his best, but I know now that if he had truly loved me, I wouldn't have been in that lab still. Charlie was by far the nicest scientist. He would explain almost everything to me. He never did tell me the purpose for learning all of this, or why the lab kept me around. The older I got, the more curious I became. I wanted to meet other people. I started asking to become part of the outside world and to have real human interaction beyond the four walls in which I had spent all my life. When I turned 13, I got my chance. The lab enrolled me in school. Chapter 1. Sorry. We just finished the prologue. This will be your mother. You can call her Mom. Carl was one of the scientists that raised me. Her name is Susan. That's what everyone else will call her. This is Dad. Brendan was a second scientist. He was the one that taught me how to lie so well. Everyone else will call him Bill. You will live here, Charlie said, referring to the house in which we were standing. I looked around at the one-story house. It was very nice, especially compared to the room that I was used to. Inside the front door were the living room and the dining room. It was an open concept type area. Down the hall, there was a bathroom and 2 bedrooms. There was this weird square door on the ceiling at the end of the hall. Charlie called it the attic. My new parents seemed kind, but I knew everyone was keeping something from me. It was the way they smiled. Sort of, I know something that you don't know smile. I was used to seeing that smile on the scientists' faces, even though I knew something was going on. I lost my spot. I was here, or what everyone in the mind for me. I still didn't know why I was here or what everyone had in mind for me. I would have asked, but I wasn't allowed to ask questions. All you have to do is go to school and meet people, Brendan said. Try not to be nice to everyone, he added as an afterthought. I almost forgot, Carl said. You will be called Cheria Marshall. Cheria Marshall, I repeated in my monotonous voice to let him know that I understood. When you get to school tomorrow, find the office. They'll tell you where to go to find your classes and everything else, Charlie added, smiling. I nodded. We'll call you as much as we can, okay? Have fun and don't be scared. Charlie squeezed my shoulder and walked out the door. The other 2 followed. They were gone. I didn't know what to think of that. The scientist had always been there. I felt very alone until I looked over at my 2 new smiling parents. How do you do? Mom asked. Fine, I replied timidly. If you have any questions, feel free to ask Bill. Feel free to ask, Bill offered. Like I said before, I was never really allowed to ask questions. In the lab, Carl and Brendan would get angry with me if I tried. Every so often I could get an answer of Charlie, but most of the time he wouldn't tell me anything either. The sudden ability to ask questions hit me like a ton of bricks. I didn't know where to start. Thousands of questions flooded my mind. I didn't get the right to the point. I didn't get right to the point. Why are they doing this? Mom and Dad exchanged a worried glance. I could tell that they were thinking of something to say. A lie? They want you to start a normal life. They want us to take care of you, Mom said. Like I said, Brendan taught me to lie. He told me signs I have to avoid when I lie, like glancing away instead of making eye contact, or slight chances in the pitch of my voice without meaning to. Brendan also taught me how to tell if someone was lying to me. It was sort of an annoying gift to have when everyone who ever spoke to you was keeping something from you. Mom had just lied to me. However, I didn't tell her. I knew she had lied. Like I never told Charlie when he lied to me. I once asked Brendan why he had told me a lie. He got angry because not only had I called him out on the lie, I had asked a question as well. In response, he told me he hadn't lied, which was another lie. I felt it unnecessary to start the vicious cycle with my new mother. I just decided to ask another question and see if I would get the truth. Who are you? Why did they choose you to look after me? I asked. Dad paused for a moment. We are a happily married couple that could not have our own children. We were lucky enough to adopt you, Chera. Dad lied. I realized I wasn't going to get any straight answers, so I stopped asking questions. I wondered for a moment whether this was why I was told not to ask questions in the first place. Sensing that I was finished with my questioning, Susan showed me to my room. I was repuzzled. When I saw where I had to sleep, it was a decent room, unlike things I would see in my future. But everything was pink. The walls, the bed, the curtains. Having been raised by 3 men, I was not a girly girl at all. I didn't think I'd ever own anything pink. Do you like it, Shara? Mom asked. It's great, I lied, following our new family tradition. Mom obviously couldn't tell I was lying and seemed pleased. She told me to get comfortable and that she would call me later when supper was ready. Then she left me alone. I looked around my new room. There was a bed, a dresser, and some shelves. One of the shelves had a TV on it. Another had some dolls on it that I knew I would never touch. Charlie had tried to give me a doll once when I was 5. I accidentally ripped its head off and threw it to the corner of my room. I turned on the TV and sat on my bed. Charlie had brought me a TV when I was 11. There was never anything interesting on. They had blocked all the channels except the Discovery Channel. I guess. I did learn a lot from it, but it definitely wasn't very entertaining. That's why I didn't really watch the screen in my new room. I figured it would be as boring as the TV I used to have, so I just sat thinking about how much my life has changed. I went from living in a lab, being raised by 3 scientists, to living in a house with 2 loving parents. The only similarity was that everyone was still lying to me. Then I started to think about my real parents, even though I had never met them. This was something I often did when I was alone. I would ask myself questions, never daring to ask them out loud. Why didn't they want me? Why are they now? Where are they now? Was I not good enough for them? Thinking this was often made me sad, but Carl told me not to show emotions. Emotions made you weak and annoying. In about an hour, Mom called me for supper. This would be the first meal I had ever eaten with another person at the lab. My food was always just slid through the slot at my door. I think it was Brendan who would make it for me. He wasn't a very good cook, which was probably the reason why I was thin, because the food they always made me eat vitamins to make up for all the nutrition I wasn't getting. I walked into the kitchen to see Mom standing by the stove and Dad waiting at the table. I joined Dad. I looked around the room and noticed something on the ceiling. Mom told me it was a fire alarm, as she brought over some spaghetti and a plate of garlic bread. It smelled great. I went to grab my fork, but found there were 3. Mom, why do I have 3 forks? I asked. That one is for spaghetti, that one is for the salad, and that one is for dessert, she told me, pointing to each one, smiling. I had heard a word I didn't understand. What is dessert? Mom looked taken aback. I felt embarrassed. Dessert is what we eat after a main course, she said. If her words would remain remind me. When she realized I had never heard of dessert, she went on. It's usually sweet. She couldn't think of anything other way to describe the word. I nodded, still embarrassed that I didn't know what it was. I suddenly felt even more uneasy about starting at a real school. Everyone would think I was stupid. The scientists were crazy to think that I was ready to interact with real people. I started eating my meal. It was very good, especially compared to anything Brendan had ever cooked. After our plates were empty, Mom took them away and came back with a cake. This is dessert. She smiled, handing me a small plate. I had only eaten cake once before. It was on my 13th birthday. I hadn't even known it was my birthday. None of the scientists had ever mentioned it was my birthday before. I didn't even know what a birthday was. It seemed obvious that was the real celebration. I could remember with Carl saying, "Finally, we've made it." Then I started thinking about it, and I realized that there had been 12 other experiments. If I was called Experiment 13, of course, I never asked anyone what happened to the other experiments because I wasn't supposed to ask questions. It's amazing what a single piece of cake can make you remember. After supper, Mom told me about school. She taught me how to open a locker, what I needed for school supplies, and what they were used for. She also told me how to buy my lunch. She went over so many things. I started to feel worried again about being placed into civilization. I took in all the information and went to bed. I couldn't get to sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling, which had glow-in-the-dark stars arranged in the constellations I had once learned about on my TV. I was going over everything I had learned that day. I ended up falling asleep around 2 o'clock. When I woke up, I got ready for school. I looked in my closet. Most of my new clothes were pink. I figured this was a hint about how I was supposed to act. So I put on my pink shirt with a white heart in the middle and some jeans with design up the side. I grabbed the pink and white sneakers from the floor of my closet and put them on. I looked at myself in the mirror. I usually wore my straight brown hair back in a ponytail, and that's what I did. Mom knocked on the door a moment later and came in with a pair of scissors. I looked at the scissors, wondering what they were for. "I thought you might want a new haircut for your first day of school," she smiled, holding the scissors. I nodded, even though I was unsure about the whole thing. I sat down a while. Mom began to cut my hair. I had only ever had one haircut before, and it happened when I was 8. Charlie just sort of took the scissors and tried to cut a straight line. He had chopped it to my ears, and it had been growing ever since. I was very surprised when Mom was finished. My hair looked amazing. It was layered, and it actually had volume. I smiled, remembering the stringly hair I usually saw in the mirror. "Thank you," I said. "Now let's do your makeup." Mom said she taught me all sorts of things about makeup. When she was finished, I actually looked like a real girl, not some girl who had been in the same room all her life. Somehow, Mom had taken the haunted look out of my eyes by adding some color on top. "You look beautiful, Shara." Mom hugged my shoulder. "This is from Carl," my mom said, holding a small heart-shaped pin. "He wants you to wear it so he can keep an eye on things at school. He says you must always have it on. Now come, breakfast is ready." After breakfast, I had to go outside to catch the school bus. When it came, I got on and realized there was only one empty seat. I sat down and stared out the window, trying to ignore all the stares and whispers. The bus ride was quick, but it seemed like it took forever. We got to school, and where I stood in awe for a moment, at the size of the building, then I followed the rest of the kids from my bus right inside to my new... Chapter 2. "Shara Marshall," I repeated to the secretary. She printed something off her computer and handed it to me. "There's your schedule, dear," she said, and looked back at her computer. I looked at it. It made absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. It just appeared to me to be a jumble of words, names, and numbers, all organized into little boxes. Excuse me," I started, hoping it wouldn't be weird for me not to understand this. "What does this mean?" I held my breath, not wanting her to get mad at me for asking a question. I still wasn't sure if everyone would be as willing to answer my questions as Mom and Dad had been. The woman stood up and leaned over to the counter, to have a look at my schedule. She explained each word. One was my class subject, another was the teacher's name, and then the room number. Then she pointed in my direction of room 119. I was getting used to answering questions now. Thank you, I said as I left the office, turning right down the long hallway. I followed the numbers on the doors until I reached 119. I didn't think school was going to be hard at all. It seemed pretty easy up until I got into my first class. My breath caught into my throat. My first class was English. When I entered the room, dozens of faces turned to look at me. I didn't know where to sit. Everyone else that came into the room after me seemed to know where to sit. I just stood there at the back until the teacher walked in. Are you our new student? She asked kindly. I nodded. She showed me to a seat where I took out my binder, like all the other kids. I had never been in a room with so many people before. There had to be at least 30 other students. My heart started pounding harder than harder as I looked up at the students around me. They were all talking and laughing. The sounds blurred together in my mind. Too many things, even worse. The teacher asked me to introduce myself in front of the whole class. I would have rather eaten my new sneaker, even if it was pink. I shook my head without saying anything, afraid I wouldn't scream if I opened my mouth. Everyone was looking at me. I started breathing heavily. Looks like our new student is a little shy. The teacher looked at me worriedly. Class, this is Shara Marshall. I want you all to make her feel right at home. This wouldn't happen unless they all put on white lab coats, used words I didn't understand, and constantly lied to me. The rest of the class went by quickly. I found it easy to learn by listening to the teacher. When the bell rang, I didn't know what it was. At first, I thought it was a fire alarm that Mom had told me about, but no one else seemed worried that we were about to burn alive. Then they all just packed up their things and noisily and left the room. I followed suit. I remembered my schedule and took it out. My next class was math in room 221. I set out to look for it, confident that I would be able to find it without any trouble. I was certainly uneducated at this point in my life. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't stupid. I just didn't have a lot of common sense that a person just picks up throughout his or her life. This wasn't my fault by any means. I had been kept in my room for 13 years with various novels, textbooks, and the Discovery Channel to learn from, only being left outside to enjoy the outdoors once a week. These activities don't usually focus on teaching you common sense. I was now in the biggest building I had ever been in, and I had no idea the room 221 would be on the second floor. I had looked throughout the entire first floor and couldn't find room 221. I had been following the door numbers, but they never seemed to reach the 200s. The bell had rung again, and I was lost. I had found my way back to the office to ask, how do I get to room 221? Just up those stairs to the right, the secretary said. Stairs? I asked. Yes, right there. She pointed to the open door. There was a staircase there that I hadn't noticed before. Thank you, I said, and walked over to the stairs. I had never climbed stairs before, but it seemed easy enough. I stepped on the first one with my right foot and brought my left foot up beside it. As slowly as if they might start moving. I might lose my balance. I clung to the railing for dear life. Eventually, I made it all the way up to the 13 stairs. When I finally reached my class, I was 10 minutes late. Who are you? The teacher said gruffly. I looked at all the other students and felt my body tense up again. Shara Marshall, I sputtered. Oh, right. The new student. Well, don't just stand there. Sit down. He pointed to a seat in the back of the room. Sitting beside me was a girl who I recognized from an English class. Did you get lost? She whispered. I nodded. Can I see your schedule? She held out her hand. Apparently, she had no difficulty asking questions. I handed her my schedule. I've got the same classes as you. I can help you around if you want, she offered. That would be nice, I said truthfully. My name is Nikki. She smiled. We have lunch next. Did you bring money? I nodded. Great, me too. We can wait in line together. I'm thinking of having the... Nikki, stop talking. The teacher glared at her. His look reminded her reminded me of the look Carl would get when I had asked a question. This time I knew to pack my things up when the bell rang. Nikki linked her arm through mine and led me to the cafeteria. I was in awe of all the people. I was especially surprised at how many boys there were, since I had never seen one in person. I was having weird feelings like butterflies in the pit of my stomach. Have you seen any guys you like yet? Nikki asked me while we were waiting in the line. It took me a while to understand what she meant. I shook my head. I'll introduce you to some good ones, she grinned. I was all tensed up again. I had thought the classrooms were bad enough. I hadn't realized that there could have been more people in the building. I was obviously wrong. There had been at least 500 people in this room alone. I could hardly breathe. Everyone around me was talking, laughing, eating, some doing all three at once. I got the same thing that Nikki did for lunch. Then I followed her through the outrageous crowd of eating students to a table in the middle of the cafeteria. There were a few other people around at the table. Hey guys, this is Shara. She's new here, Nikki said. That's Sasha, Lara, and Michelle. And my boyfriend, Robbie. Nikki pointed around the table and then sat beside Robbie. I sat between Sasha and Lara. I noticed some people looking at me from other tables. They looked almost mad that I was sitting at this table. I wondered briefly why they would be angry for me. I hadn't done anything that usually made Carl mad. Sasha must have realized that I had been thinking. They want to be you, she said bluntly. Why? Well, first of all, you're the new girl. Everyone knows the new girl is at least 10 times hotter than the girls that have been around forever, Lara explained, matter-of-factly shrugging one tan shoulder and flipping her dark brown hair out of her face. Add that to the fact that they're jealous that you're hanging with us. Not to brag, but everyone wants to hang with us, Michelle looked smug. She had red curly hair and was wearing a lot of makeup. She also had a little light brown specks on her nose. I thought about these two reasons why I silently ate lunch. I hadn't really been sure what Lara had meant by hotter. I didn't feel too hot or too cold, actually. It was a good temperature in the cafeteria. After deciding that Lara hadn't been talking about temperature, I figured hot was a good thing to be. I actually felt lucky for once. They said that everyone liked the new girl. I later found out that that wasn't exactly true at every school. All right, so that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed me reading my favorite book. Let me know down below if you guys liked it, and if you want me to continue, I will gladly continue if you guys want me to. So let me know down below, or let me know on Instagram. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Those are always down below. Don't forget to subscribe to be a part of the Lizzanator family. We'll be happy to have you. I will leave the name of the book, the title, who wrote it, and where to buy it in the description if you guys want to check that out. Always remember that a little magic goes a long way, and I'll speak to you guys in my next video. Bye, guys!